when we started Friends, she wanted to go, and she's the researcher, the history buff, and she wanted to do a little bit of research on where did this crisis in education begin? Because you always hear these critics talking about, if we could just get back to that golden age in education where kids were graduating, they could read and write, do basic math, that'd be great. Let's just get back to that. So she's thinking, where did this begin? And in her mind, our mind, and our generation, we're thinking, maybe that's the fabulous 50s. I don't know when that is, the fabulous 50s. Well, I don't know if you know, but in the fabulous 50s, we're only graduating 50% of our high school kids. 50% of our kids graduated from high school in the 1950s. Go back 50 years further, 1903 is the data I have in my head, and all this is on our website. You'll see some data, but all this is on our website. Some of it's on the poster that many of you picked up on the way in. In 1903, only 3% of our public school students are graduating from high school. So, and then I'll talk just a little bit about where we are today. But we did some research, and as far back as we could find, there's a lot of reference to crisis in education for the last 50 or 60 years. Furthest back we could find is this 5-part series in Life magazine titled, you can see it, Crisis in Education. And on the front cover, they're comparing an American schoolboy, high school kid, to his Russian counterpart. And in the article, by the way, Life magazine paid this young man's family $3 to follow him around for the day. And in the article, they report that, Stephen, nice kid, goes to school 6.5, 7 hours a day and does what he needs to do, but he's involved in a lot of these extracurricular, frivolous activities like football, for example, and that's not really, that's not going to take him anywhere. And then, and he only went to school 5 days a week. And then the Russian kid, by the way, this was in 1958. The Russian kid, he went to school 6 days a week, 10 hours a day, and then studied into the late evening hours on his academics and did not participate in any frivolous activities. He was clearly going somewhere. Does anybody remember around that time in history what happened? Can everybody remember? Big moment in history. Sputnik, right. Guess what? Sputnik. Russians launched Sputnik. American government panics. They look around for a scapegoat. Guess who was an easy scapegoat? Who wouldn't fight back? Our public schools. And it's been that ever since. That's where this crisis in education came from, if you're ever curious, if you ever want to know about it. And ever since, every time our schools appear to be falling behind, or our nation appears to be falling behind in something, they revert back to blaming the public schools, which is really, really a shame, because you guys are doing some really remarkable work. Now I just want to show you the truth about Texas public schools. I think the format here is, I've got 15 minutes, and then the next speaker's got 15, and then we're bam, 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 we're out of here. So we won't take too much of your time. I'm just going to go through some of these real quick because a lot of people don't know it. And when Leslie and I are out speaking even to groups of educators, teachers, staff, many educators don't even know the truth behind their successes over the years, particularly the last 10 years. We hear a lot about our public schools are failing. So are they failing? That's the myth. Truth, Texas public schools have never been more successful than they are today. And this is just one measure. You can look at many measures, and we'll look at a couple of others. Graduation rate, tax era. Here we go. 2003, first year, 47% passed. 2011, 91% passed. That is remarkable. That's incredible. You guys are, hello. You need to give yourselves an applause for that. Come on. Pat the guy on your back and pat somebody on the back. I mean, that's pretty incredible achievement over that is that 8 years? I didn't pass tax math. 8 years. But, okay, so, and was the target static for that period of time? Was it a static target for that whole 8 years? No, they kept moving the target. And y'all knocked it out of the park. Way to go, science people. Tax math, look at that. Pretty cool. Tax ELA, reading. What, our kids can read? I didn't know that. I've been reading the newspapers and apparently they can't read. But the data shows a much different story. Tax social studies, nearly every kid knows their states and capitals. Congratulations. We point out the data here. Well, you know what, I'm gonna move on to the next one here, but okay, next one, dropout rate. We hear a lot about this dropout rate. That may be the biggest criticism of our public schools. Oh, by the way, what I was going to say about the previous slide, all those were in the 90+% success rate, right? Once you hit that 90% mark, it becomes exponentially more difficult to continue moving upward, right? Anybody notice we have a new test in Texas? Right? You know why? because you're doing too good. You look too good on the numbers, and they need something to make you look bad so they can promote some of their agendas. We'll get into that later. I think David Anthony is going to speak to that. Okay, so class of 2011 graduation rates. This is from the United States Department of Education on a state-by-state comparison. How do you think we did? Did we do fairly well? Or are we kind of middle of the pack or bottom of the pack? Okay, all right. I like that participation. That's good. Okay, and we break it down by subgroup because our demographics are dramatically different than most other states. We have one of the highest percentages of kids on free and reduced lunch, poverty indicator. We have one of the highest percentages of kids who come from a single parent home or no parent home, and we have one of the highest percentages of kids who are LEP or no EP, right? We do that, and yet we are able to achieve some extraordinary results. And all of it, again, is on our website, so you can just check it there, or on that poster, some of it. Okay, Hispanics, 82%. We have an 82% graduation rate for Hispanics. It's not perfect, it's not 100%, but we're working on it. However, compared to the Hispanic populations across the country and all other states, they rank second in the nation, and even then only behind Maine. I don't know how you compare the two. You can't really compare Texas and Maine. Okay. I mean, you can, and they do. The white, I skipped the white, you can see that. Our white student population, first in the nation compared to their peers across this country. Pretty impressive on graduation rates. African Americans, 81% graduation rate. Working on it again. But look at that. They tied for first in the nation against their peers. Who'd they tie? Right. It's not California or Arizona or some of the states that we can be compared to. And by the way, when you do compare us to many of our like states, we're blowing them away. Asian, 95%, first in the nation. Economically disadvantaged, another subgroup, 84%, second behind only South Dakota. That's fun for me. Okay, myth, Texas SAT scores are falling. Our kids are not doing well on SAT, right? Wrong, our kids are actually doing very well on SAT. Are the scores rising? Actually, no, they've pretty much been flatlined for the last 10 years or more. But SAT participation has risen dramatically. And what happens when you increase testing participation? What happens? What's the natural thing to occur? The average would come down, right? Performance would come down just a little bit. Not in Texas, okay? Hispanic participation in that 5-year period, 06 to 11, up 57% in that period on SAT takers. And yet our scores remained flatlined. I'd say that's remarkable. African American population, 43% increase in percentage of African Americans who were taking the SAT in that period. Pretty good. By the way, you guys get a lot of credit for that because you're leading our minority populations towards higher aspirations to things like higher education, college, whatever. So pat yourself on the back again. And remember, you need to pat yourself on the back a lot because nobody else is doing it. I'm saying. Okay. Myth, Texas schools lag behind other states and the world, other countries for that matter. Here's just one measure of many, okay? Every subgroup in Texas ranks in the top 8 on the National Assessment of Educational Progress when compared to their peers. Again, you break it down by subgroup because you can't compare our overall student performance number against South Dakota's, for example. You can't do that. Different demographics, apples and oranges. So, on 8th grade NAEP science test, this is 2011, Hispanics were 6th, African American 4th in the nation, whites 8th in the nation. Whoop, I don't know how to go back. I guess I'm done with that. Yeah, okay, so now what about against the world, right? Isn't that a pretty slide? I love that slide. If you look up here, I think we're going to play a short video.
You may have heard that U.S. students rank near the bottom of the developing world in student performance, and our competitiveness is under threat. Well, it's true. Here are data from the Program for International Student Assessment, or PISA. U.S. 15-year-olds do worse in mathematics than kids from a lot of other countries. But there is another way to look at it. UNICEF has assembled information on the level of child poverty in many countries after taxes and transfers. PISA has broken U.S. schools into 5 quintiles, according to the percentage of kids eligible for free lunch. So if one takes countries and plots them according to the PISA mathematics scores on the vertical axis and child poverty on the horizontal axis, a different story emerges. U.S. schools in the highest quintile, essentially no poverty, score higher than Finland, which has reduced child poverty to the lowest level, at least in Europe. U.S. schools in the next quintile score better than France, Germany, or England. The third quintile, which is also the U.S. average, is near the bottom of developed countries, but there are still 2 quintiles to go, and these are what take us down. Still, at any given level of poverty, U.S. schools do better than countries which on a poverty basis they could sensibly be compared. Now, scores like PISA do not capture very well the extreme cases where the U.S. is behind the rest of the world. Here's one. This is a graph showing how U.S. students compare with Chinese students on a test of conceptual physics after the end of high school. Even the low-scoring Chinese students score better than all but the smallest number of high-scoring U.S. students. But what lesson to take from this? Is it that U.S. students are less intelligent? Is it that U.S. teachers are less competent? Probably not. You see, Chinese students get 5 years of physics in high school, while only a third of U.S. students get as much as 1 year. I think what it proves is that students learn a subject better when they've had it than when they didn't get it at all. There is a need to improve the U.S. competitive future, but we have to make sure to take the influences of poverty into account, and we really have to make sure that we have enough teachers with the knowledge and teaching skill to offer courses that our kids really need.
Hey, that's Michael Marder. He's the Dean of Physics at UT Austin. And he doesn't have any skin in the game, but he loves numbers. He is, if you open up the dictionary and look for data geek, that's the guy right there, data geek. But he loves plotting data to his little bubble charts that he's invented. He loves doing that, and we love having him do it. In fact, it's actually, this is as a result of a group of volunteers, Texans, who wanted to do something to help share what's right, help share the real story about public ed, and they got together and started coming up with messages, and they wanted to produce some videos, and they needed a home, and so friends, we're very fortunate and blessed to be able to host their work and then take it on the road on their behalf. So I want to thank the Be Proud. It's called Be Proud Texas is the name of their group. And their stuff, there's about 8 or 10 videos on our Friends of Texas Public Schools website, similar type videos. Okay.